I feel like this book is gaslighting me. I don't understand. Teenage lesbians who, just have a chip on the shoulder. I don't know. Hello. Today we're doing something a little bit different. I thought it would be kind of fun to rank all the extreme horror books that I read. I read a little over 100 books this year. I was genuinely surprised to see that 50 of them were extreme horror. I've seen so many tier rankings over the years, and I'm kind of excited to try to do it myself. Okay, so first things first, let's go over our categories. Okay, so at the top, we have Haunts Me to This Day, and I feel like that's pretty self-explanatory. And then next up, we have Gallows Guffaws, which just, if you're familiar with gallows humor or black humor, dark humor, basically just it's extreme horror, but it's also funny. And then compelling carnage means that there is still an abundance of extreme horror elements, but it is also thought-provoking and has a little bit more depth to it. Plot over perversion, not to be confused with compelling carnage. Plot over perversion just means that there are extreme horror elements, but just not that much. It is much more plot-centered than in the gore and everything. Pump and Dump. Pump and Dump is exactly what it sounds like. It means it's all action and there's very little emotion attached to it. And last but, well, I guess and least, but fun while it lasted. I enjoyed it, but it's not a particularly memorable story for me. We have 50 books to get through, so let's go ahead and get started. I'm not really going to spend a lot of time getting into the plots of all these because there are 50 of them, so we're going to just kind of categorize them, and all of these books I've talked about in other videos. So the first book we have is 100% Match. Okay, so 100% Match, I didn't really like this very much, to be honest. My problem with this was that it wasn't descriptive enough for me. It was gross, but it didn't really have a lot of descriptions that made you really cringe, It was just okay. Blood and Brains by Judith Sonnet. Now this has 2 short stories in it. I believe it's Bloodsuck, which is about vampires, and then there is Zombie Vomit Shit Show, which is about zombies. Because it's in one book, I'm going to have to put it in one spot. The first book about vampires, Bloodsuck, has some scenes in it that left quite an impression on me. Oh, the impressions that were left. So we're going to put this up here. Particularly the first story, Bloodsuck. Next up, we have Talia by Daniel J. Volpe. I believe this was the first extreme horror book that I ever read. I got this and the Slob at the same time, but I'm pretty sure I read Talia first. I'm gonna put this in Pump and Dump. It's good. I think it's important to note that these categories aren't necessarily best to worst, because depending on what you're looking for, sometimes a Pump and Dump is exactly what you want. I remember thinking that the plot was kind of shallow for Miss Talia, but that there is plenty of sex and gore and violence in it. Blue Jay by Megan Stockton. Definitely... Oh, it's going in one of these for sure. I'm trying to remember. I feel like Blue Jay actually really didn't have... It's a creepy premise, but it doesn't have that many scenes, so I'm going to go with plot over perversion. Not to say that it's not in there. It's just less of it. Oh, and also, just a small aside, some of these might be a little bit, oh, that's not extreme horror. Look, it's subjective, okay? I did the best that I could to include books that were justifiably considered extreme horror. If you disagree, you could very well be right. I don't know, man. I tried my best. I don't know what else to say about it. Butterscotch by Asia Brito Guerrero, I believe. Ooh, I liked this so much. And then the ending happened, and I didn't like that. I was feeling the book. I probably would have ended up maybe in Compelling Carnage, but the ending I just did not like. I did not. Dead Inside by Chandler Morrison. Now this one, oh no. Okay. This has to make my top 3 as far as rough reads. Given the things that I am sensitive to, this hits one of them in a very real way. In case you don't know, if you're new here, sensitive to babies and animals, and based off of Bloodsuck from Judith's sonnet, prolapsed anuses. But this one does not have any of those, but it does have some of it does have babies. Oh, God. Okay, so yeah, haunts me to this day. There is one scene in particular that, yeah, and sometimes it do be like that, where it's the plot, it's not even necessarily the plot. Sometimes it's just a particular scene that like sticks with you. Okay, Die Tommy by Aron Beauregard. What was I just saying? That sometimes there's just a scene. Now, here's the thing. Die Tommy is kind of like that, where there is a particular scene that sticks out to me, but the rest of the book was kind of just like, okay, whatever. Even though I just said I guess that's the thing. If there's one scene, you still need the rest of the book to kind of prop it up. But I do want to acknowledge that Die Tommy had a scene, and if you don't know, Aron Beauregard's books include pictures. This one actually included a picture of said scene, so there's that. So it's gonna go in fun while it lasted, but just know. I just want you to know. Oh, okay. Fetal Backwash. Funny! Fetal Backwash by Judith Sonnet was how I discovered Bizarro. This is an extreme horror Bizarro hybrid. Possibly the most fun extreme horror book that I've read all year. This just opened a whole world to me. Judith Sonnet doesn't always include humor in her books, but when she does, I just really, really enjoy it. His Pain by Ralph James White. It's definitely compelling carnage, but does it also haunt me to this day? I wouldn't say it haunts me. I just really, really liked it. I'm going to put this in compelling carnage. Ralph James White in particular, he's probably this entire category of compelling carnage is going to be Ralph James White. His Pain in particular, I think, is something special. So if you really want to read an extreme horror book that has layers, that I really couldn't think of a better recommendation than this one. Everybody Dies Famous in a Small Town. This is also by Ralph James White. See, here's the thing. Do I actually just want this entire category to be Ralph James White? There are certainly layers to this, but I think out of the ones that I've read, even by Ralph James White, this one's it was fun while it lasted, but it's not one, when I think about Ralph James White, it's not the first one that pops in my head, you know what I mean? Same thing with Fight for Me, where again, I think that you could make the argument, but overall, this is a very smut-heavy book. I'm just gonna put that in fun while it lasted. Okay, Kink by Crowley Barnes. This definitely had moments of humor in it, but does it belong up here? Ooh, it might belong up here. It definitely, I always tend to look for commentary in books in general, so you can always find it, but is that the thing that kind of stands out about it? Not really. I'm gonna put it here because there's certain parts that I do remember making me really laugh. Molly is Missing by Sam West. I do genuinely mean that when I say that it was fun while it lasted. I mean that it was fun while I was reading it. But it's just, if you're going to read as much as I read, they're not all going to stand out. You know what I mean? So we're going to put that in fun while it lasted. Population Zero by Ralph James White. That is going to go in compelling carnage. That definitely, oh, the carnage. Pretty intense scenes in it. In the Hands of the Heathens by Aron Beauregard. I'm gonna, the plot on this one was just kind of meh for me, so I'm gonna put that in fun while it lasted. Okay, now Grandpappy. When I read this, I do not recall, I could be mistaken. This is the same author as 100% Match, which I didn't really care for that much. This I liked a lot more, and in hindsight, I feel that this may have actually been my first introduction to Bizarro. I don't know if he intended it to be Bizarro, but it is bizarre for sure. But was it funny? There was a plot, but it was so nonsensical. Oh my gosh, this is so hard. A lot of it is just sort of chaos, so we're gonna put it in Pump and Dump. Maggie's Grave by David Sodergren. I'm gonna put this in plot over perversion. David Sodergren, his writing in general, he was one of the authors where I wasn't really sure that he belonged as an extreme horror category, but I would see him included in those sorts of discussions. Where is the line? There's books that are not described as extreme horror that are way more intense than books that are. If you disagree, that is completely valid. But here he is, so here we go. Most of the extreme horror elements or horror elements are body horror. That's kind of the main thing that he does. Tapewyrmin by Judith Sonnet. Oh boy. This is so gross. Yeah, this is gonna go in pump and dump. There is a plot technically. Oh. Just Tatters by Eric Ashmore, I believe. See, my problem is, and I've said this before, I am not afraid of clowns, but I keep trying to be afraid of clowns. This was just kind of okay, but that might just be me because I'm not afraid. If I were, that any of these clown stories would have a bigger impact. Okay, so Playground by Aron Beauregard. There is a scene in this book that makes me laugh really hard every time I think about it. It's not supposed to be funny though. I don't believe that it is, but it makes me laugh every time I think about it. I don't know if I should put this in just because of that one scene. Should I do it? The extreme horror elements do not haunt me to this day, but there's a character in it that I am emotionally invested in. There's definitely okay, we're gonna put it here because even though it's not meant to be funny, it was. So I don't know what to tell you. The Cuck by Aron Beauregard. I actually enjoyed this book more than one would think. I think that there is more to this story than you would think based off of the title, but I wouldn't say it's thought-provoking. I have no choice but to put it in pump and dump, but I do want to say that there is a plot here. Pump and dump doesn't mean that there's no plot, it just means that there's not a whole lot of emotion attached to it. No One Rides for Free by Judith Sonnet. Yeah, this is also going in pump and dump. This was an experience reading this. This is where it belongs. Okay, and then we also have The Haar by David Sodergren. Same thing as the other one. The horror elements are mostly body horror. Very, very good book. But I have to put it in plot over perversion because it just does not have the same level of gore and stuff as these other books. Psych Ward Blues by Judith Sonnet. This I'm going to put in compelling carnage. This I thought was very intriguing and thought-provoking. It gets into life and death and the afterlife. That one definitely, I would say, belongs there. My Vagina Smells Like Sulfur. This is going to go in Fun While It Lasted, and that even may be a bit of a stretch. The book itself is fine, but I just... the title. Hardcore Kelli by Rath James White. Out of his books, it's kind of hard. I feel like I'm such a fan of Rath James White's work that unfortunately for him, I'm holding him to a higher standard. Even though this would be compelling carnage if it was any other author, for him, it's less so than some of his other work. So we're going to put it in Fun While It Lasted. Splatter-Saurus by Judith Sonnet. So this is about people being attacked by dinosaurs, so this is going to go up here. The Clown Hunt, also by Judith Sonnet. We struggle with the same issue. I'm not afraid of clowns. I kept wanting it to be sillier than it actually was. Ooh, we're gonna put it in Fun While It Lasted. Psychic Teenage Bloodbath by Carl John Lee. This is action-packed. There is a plot, but I don't care about it really. This is just action-packed. The Black Farm. This is going to go in compelling carnage. There's a lot of heavy subject matters discussed here. The Girl Next Door by Jack Ketchum. This is going to go and haunts me to this day. This is one of those books that much of it you wouldn't necessarily consider to be extreme horror, but it's always included in the conversation anyway because it's just so disturbing. The Pig by Edward Lee. This is going to go in Pump and Dump. It's just sort of an excuse for the things. Rabbit Hunt by Rath James White is going to go in compelling carnage. Yeah, out of what I've read so far, and I definitely have some catching up to do, there's plenty that I have not read yet, but I think besides his Pain, Rabbit Hunt is probably my second favorite by him. Summer Never Ends by Judith Sonnet. I'm going to put this in Pump and Dump. This is a book that possibly some people would have gotten a little bit more layers out of, but for me, it was kind of mostly a gore fest. Girl Flesh by May Leitz. It is self-described as an extreme horror book about love. And it really, really threw me because there really are very few horror scenes. This is definitely in plot over perversion. I got more out of the plot than I did out of the horror elements as far as entertainment is concerned. The Resurrectionist by Ref James White. Do I want this in Compelling Carnage? This is his most famous work. Oh, I just can't put it in Fun While It Lasted because I feel like it's... Ugh, I just can't. I can't. Because it's really good. It's going to Compelling Carnage. Like, I can't. No, that one, I cannot put that lower than that. Baby in a Blender. Oh. You know, it's just, you know, babies. You know, babies. This was really the next level experience as far as extreme horror is concerned. If I had to pick the most intense read of the year, it's probably that one. Magick by Judith Sonnet. I'm gonna put this in Pump and Dump because the plot would not be that interesting if it wasn't for the smut. The Slob by Aron Beauregard. Oh, The Slob being the second extreme horror book that I ever read. And I remember because Talia being the first, it's very jam-packed from the start versus the Slob, which you really don't get into the action until like the halfway point. But then, oh boy, does it pack a punch. One of those books like this where there's just a scene which... Them by Mike Watson. Now this definitely has plenty of perversion and it has an interesting plot, but is it thought-provoking? I mean, kind of. Yeah, we'll go with Compelling Carnage because I think there is something there that's kind of worth chewing on. The Swine. This is a pump and dump for sure. Just action-packed pig's heads. Just, you know, very Texas Chainsaw Massacre type vibes. Hashtag Thighgap by Chandler Morrison. This definitely has some stuff going on with it. We'll go with Compelling Carnage. You can probably guess, based off of the title alone, what sort of subjects you are getting into. And you know what? Let's just kind of skip here to Voracious by Ref James White, because it's kind of similar. It's kind of similar in some of the subjects that it touches on. So, bam. So Through the Eyes of Desperation, the red and black version. There is a solid plot here. Is it thought? I don't remember my thoughts being provoked. There was no thoughts happening in my head while I was reading these. Yeah. So we'll put these in. It was fun while it lasted. Both the black version by Daniel J. Volpe and the red version by Aron Beauregard, their collaboration. To Be Devoured by Sarah something. We're going with plot over perversion. Now, I will be honest with you, I do not know if this belongs in this category. This is one of those books. I remember the plot and I remember certain parts of it, but I don't really remember the intensity of the gore and stuff, if it really belongs here. But again, I saw people online referring to it as such, so I kind of just went with it. But I have beef with this book. It's about a girl who's obsessed with vultures. And I'm sorry, spoiler, she's obsessed with vultures. So what does she do? She behaves not like a vulture. She kills things and eats them raw after she kills them, which, you know what doesn't do that? Vultures. If she's obsessed with vultures, she should be waiting for people or animals to die on their own and then getting on that shit, you know? But instead, she's going to behave like any other carnivore on Earth besides vultures and say that she's obsessed with vultures. I don't understand. If we overlook that, it's fine. Triggered by Harrison Phillips. This is very funny. I enjoyed this one. This is going to go in Gallows Guffaws. the self-awareness, having the extreme horror author write about an extreme horror author and having a sense of humor about yourself and everything. I enjoyed that one a lot. Violence on the Meek by Stuart Bray. Yeah, we're gonna put this in Pump and Dump. The plot is basically just that the guy's an asshole. And, you know, and here's his story. What good girls do. This is this compelling carnage or plot over perversion? I'm gonna put this in plot over perversion. They're definitely, it's mostly sexual elements. They are definitely there, but when you are comparing them to these other books, in comparison, this belongs in plot over perversion. And last but not least, Yellow by Aron Beauregard. There is a plot. I keep saying that. Well, they all do have one. Yeah, I'm gonna put this in Fun While It Lasted. Woo! Okay, so that is my tier list. It doesn't reflect poorly to have more books in the Fun While It Lasted category because that's probably for the best. There is simply not enough room in our noggins. If you read a lot of books, you really don't have the bandwidth for all of them to be on your mind every day. You know what I mean? I think it's for the best. You do want most of them to be fun while you're reading it, and then you move on with your life. So yeah, I think for my first year reading extreme horror, not too shabby. If you're still here, thank you so much for watching. I really do appreciate it. And maybe I'll see you the next time around. Bye. Hashtag